Hi everyone, this is Maureen of Baking with Amari, and today I want to talk about buttercream frosting, and I also want to share some of the tips that are going to help you decorate with buttercream to the best of your ability, right? So just a moment to get my screen going. I'm trying to find my presentation. All right, so I'm going to get right into it, but just an introduction. My name is Maureen Kamari. This is the Baking with Amari YouTube channel where we share baking recipes, baking tips, cake decoration tips, and today is all about cake decoration tips, right? So if you're getting started on cake decoration, especially if you're using American Buttercream frosting, and especially if you're struggling with this, today I want to share some tips and tricks to help you get better results, mainly because I deal with a lot of inquiries from people who are getting started. Also, some of our students who are getting started with buttercream frosting. So I thought it would be a good thing to share some of these tips because I'll mention these tips to people and they'll be like, oh, this is really helpful. So I thought, hey, why not? I also want to share something that we're doing recently that's, if you're struggling with buttercream, is really going to help you out. Okay. Before I get into the tips, I want you guys to understand that there's actually various types of buttercream frosting, right? There's not only one type. Now, each of them has sugar and they have butter, or they should have butter. But I want to show you guys some of the frostings or the buttercream frostings that are in there in case you didn't know, right? So most people will beginning think there's only one type, but there's actually different types, right? So number one is American buttercream frosting, which I will be talking about today. And that one is the basic, like I'd say like basically the basic one that you basically want to, most people use. It's very beginner friendly and it usually just has icing sugar or powdered sugar, butter, but especially if you're in the African region, we substitute margarine. We use margarine instead of butter. Also, you want to put some flavoring in there and also some liquid. Most of the time, like for us, we use milk, but you can also use water or juice or whatever it is that you want to use, right? And so with that, you basically want to soften your butter or your margarine, and then you want to add in the icing sugar gradually and mix it up until it's the right consistency. Another one that's really popular, but this is more the intermediate to advanced level, is Swiss meringue buttercream frosting. So that one uses castor sugar, or if you're like in the West, you're going to use just the regular granulated sugar, butter, egg whites, salt, and flavor, right? So you want to basically cook the sugar and the egg whites to a certain temperature, right? Because you don't want to feed people raw eggs. Then you want to whip that until you make, a really nice meringue. Cool that, and then you want to add the butter cubes a little bit at a time. You want to beat that until it's creamy, and then you add the flavor. It tends to be a little complicated for some people, and I have tried it. It's not always my favorite to use, mainly just because the time it takes and the cost of it, especially if you have customers who are not able to pay for it. But it gives you it's not as sweet as American buttercream frosting, so it's a really nice option if you're looking for something that's less sweet. These two are also advanced level buttercream frosting. That is French buttercream and Italian buttercream. So for French buttercream, you want to use egg yolks. You want to add sugar syrup to that, water, butter, salt, and flavor, right? So generally, instead of the sugar, we're using hot sugar syrup, right? Then for the Italian meringue, you're going to use egg whites, hot sugar syrup, butter, salt, and flavor. So that's the difference between those two, right? And then finally, there's one called ermine buttercream frosting. Some people call it boiled flour frosting because technically you're cooking icing sugar or caster sugar with flour because you don't want to eat raw flour. Then you're going to add milk, butter, salt, flavor. You want to cool that down and then whip it up. That's really popular, especially with red velvet cake, but people use it for other stuff, and some people do tend to like it. So after this tutorial, you can actually check the link below. We have a tutorial on how to make the regular American buttercream frosting. And this particular tutorial was showing you how to make the one with margarine without the yellow color, because sometimes that happens. So that was my introduction, right? The different types of buttercream. So the first, I want to share 4 tips with you guys. And then after that, I'm going to share a bonus tip that's really going to help you. Okay. So the first tip is master the art of consistency. Please realize that buttercream doesn't have one consistency. I specifically realized people may not know this when a baker friend asked me that. When she was like, your buttercream is really stiff, mine is still very soft. What do you do different, right? And the thing is that you have to realize that there's different types of consistency, and then you need to master each of them, right? So please realize there's a stiff, there's a medium, and there's a loose consistency, right? Now, for years, I've been using the stiff and the medium. Recently, I've also started incorporating the use of the loose consistency. So the stiff consistency is usually used for piping flours. Okay, if you've ever seen these buttercream flours people pipe, I like it because it holds shape. So what you want to do is have a little bit more icing sugar, a little less fat in that, and you whip it up and you color it and you pipe, right? So if you're piping flowers, you want to use the stiff consistency. If you're decorating a cake, whether it's a crumb coat or a second coat, whatever it is, you want to use the spreading consistency. So we teach these two in class. For us, we do spreading consistency and stiff if you're doing flowers. Some people call it the medium consistency. You can also call it we call it the spreading consistency. That literally helps you have a very easy way of spreading your buttercream frosting when you're decorating your cake. Okay. Third one is loose. So this is a little bit soft. It's a little softer than the spreading one. That means there's maybe a little bit more. Some people add fat. We use a little bit more liquid. This is something I'm using recently for a smooth finish. If you want to have less bubbles, less of a like a jagged surface, you want to use the smooth consistency, and it really, really, really works. This is actually something I'm going to be covering in my upcoming online class for those who choose to join. But my only thing I'll tell you when it comes to consistency, to achieve the different types of consistency, first adjust your mixing time for your frosting, right? So frost longer or shorter. Secondly, adjust the milk, right? The amount of liquid that you're adding to make it either stiffer or to make it looser or to make it, the perfect medium consistency. Also, I'll be sharing a tip that's going to help you with that. Okay. So that's the first tip. Master your consistencies. Second tip is a little bit different, but I think it's really important. Taming the sugar cloud, right? So when you add on icing sugar, y'all know this happens, right? You get this sort of poof, especially for those of us who do slightly bigger batches. Sometimes it's kind of like you sometimes lose some of the icing sugar, right? Because it's this big explosion of icing sugar, and sometimes there's a mess, by the way, guys, as well. And this is a thing, like I am very justified on talking about this because this is a thing. Like we had at one point we had an intern who used to do this, and she had to wear a mask because she has like a breathing problem. So every time she was mixing fondant for us or buttercream frosting, she had to use a mask because this is even way before Corona, before people were doing masks for obvious reasons. So yeah. So one of the things that I want to tell you is that if you want to avoid that, especially if you're doing a lot of batches, number one, add the icing sugar in small batches. So like in class, we'll tell you add the sugar, add the milk, add the sugar, add the milk. So you can do that, right? That really helps. Or You can, if you're using a mixer, use your mixer on very low speed and make sure you have the shield. Especially for those of you guys who have a mixer which has, the splash. Some people tend to remove that, the splash guard. Put it back, make sure it's on, and put it on very low speed. But to be honest, my favorite tip, and this interestingly enough was shared by a Mari alumni. She came for classes, like an advanced class, the wedding cake class. And we do this with our cake. I never thought of doing it with buttercream, but she explained to me how before she puts the thing in the stand mixer, she'll mix with her spatula. And then now she's going to put it in the mixer and mix it with the mixer, right? So put in your icing sugar, take your rubber spatula, mix it up just to kill the dust. Then you put it in your mixer and now put it on medium speed and mix. So even when we're doing class and you're mixing with a whisk, because those of you who've been into a class, use a whisk to mix the small mixes. We have you add icing sugar and use the spatula until the dust is completely done. Then after that is when you take your whisk and you mix up. And it seems like a small thing, but it really, really helps you with controlling waste and that just sort of that cloud of icing sugar. For those of you who've been in the baking industry, you realize two things cause dust: all-purpose flour and icing sugar. So if you have like a chest issue or something, that really comes in handy. So I hope that tips helps. Tip number 3, achieving bright colors. And I know this is a big thing for people who are looking for specific colors when you're making buttercream. So one thing I'll tell you, learn how to get bright, beautiful colors in your buttercream frosting. First thing, if you're getting new at this, start testing and identifying the various types of colors, right? Realize that there is gel colors, there's watercolors, there's liquid colors, there's emulsions. And I'll link a video we do on the types of food colors in this channel. Realize what they are and test each one of them. If you're new, you've never used it, instead of listening to me or somebody else tell you about it, buy one of each and just test it. And you can buy one red food color that's water, one that's gel, one that's powder, and then try them all out to see what gives you good results with your recipe, especially if you're looking for specific bright colors, right? So please know there's gel-based colors and there's water-based colors. And again, there's powder. Realize that you may have to use different techniques to get the colors you want. Like you may have to mix some ingredients with some colors. Some colors you might have to mix 2 different types of colors to get what you're looking for, right? So a good example is if I'm looking for like a deep maroon color, I'm going to mix like a bit of red. Usually I use like a red gel color, like, what is this? American have this super red that's really good, right? You can also use the powder color 4R. If you mix that and then you add a little bit, sift a little bit of cocoa powder into it and mix it. When you get slightly like the shade you're looking for, leave it for like 2 to 3 hours and then come back. You're going to find a really nice maroon color. So you need to learn like various techniques to get specific deep colors or bright colors when you're using buttercream frosting, right? There's also other different things, like learn the different techniques. Everybody has their own thing. I don't want to tell you like all bakers are the same. Some people use immersion blenders. They put in the red color and then they mix that. Some people use heat. Like if you put you mix the red, put in the microwave, the heat intensifies the red color, and then you cool it down and whip it, right? So that works for different people. Learn the different techniques that are going to work for you when it comes to American buttercream frosting, because realize frostings are different. Whipped cream is not going to behave like American buttercream frosting. So learn specifically, if I want buttercream frosting, I want maroon color, I want red color, I want emerald green color. What am I going to do? And sometimes you can just apply like, like a pink color and then airbrush something like red. There's different techniques of doing this, and you need to figure out what you want to do specifically to get the color you want. And I want to mention, I have an upcoming class. It's a 4-week class that's going to be an online course on buttercream decoration only, using American buttercream. We're going to be using like the real butter. This class specifically will be from July 22nd to August 19th. It's going to be a live class. It'll be held on in a Facebook private page. For those of you who've done my live online classes, you know how I do that. All the content that's going to be posted will be available for the 4 weeks. We're going to talk about how to make a buttercream frosting with margarine and with butter, how to get deep colors. I'm going to cover how to do red and how to do black specifically. I will also be teaching people how to do the piping, right? So this is just basically a breakdown of the class. I'll also be showing you guys how to decorate 2 vintage cake styles. I know you guys have seen these vintage cakes that are everywhere, right? So I'll be showing you how to do 2 styles using multiple piping tips. I'll show you simple piping tips, and I'll also show you slightly fancier piping tips if you want, right? 1,000 shillings if you're a Kenyan student, $10 for non-Kenyan payments. I will be linking, there's a link at the bottom for a WhatsApp DM, and I'll also put this poster on our YouTube channel for anybody who's interested in the details, right? So lots of stuff covered in this class if you're interested. And comment below, by the way, if you're interested in the classes or you have a question on the class itself. The 4th tip I want to share with you guys is storage and shelf life of American Buttercream frosting. So first and foremost, please realize it depends on the type of fat you're using. Are you using butter or are you using margarine? So first thing, check your butter. What does your butter say? When is it going to expire? Check your margarine. When does it say it's going to expire? Those are the first thing that tells you how long, because icing sugar is sugar. Sugar is going to last long. Flavor is going to last long. However, between the butter and the milk that you use, that's what's going to make your buttercream either less or more perishable. So for example, if I'm using buttercream with real butter and milk, it's going to be 3 to 7 days, right? Because it's highly perishable. It's a dairy product. It's highly perishable. I can put it in a cool, dry place. That's going to give me at least 3 days. I can put it in the fridge, which would make it go up to 7 days, sometimes 10 days. But let me tell you, to be on the safe side, 7 days. If you're using buttercream with margarine, that's going to last a bit longer, right? Please realize if you use it with milk, it'll be more perishable than when you use it with water. So if you're using something with margarine, it's going to take 7 days up to 3 months. It can go all the way up to 3 months. Make sure you have, again, checked the margarine. If your margarine is expiring in 1 day or in 10 days, that's not good, right? So it definitely depends on the margarine and the milk. I want to mention, we are assuming that there are no cake crumbs in your mixture, right? There's no cake crumbs in your mixture. Realize that if you're applying frosting on your cake and then you're scraping your buttercream frosting and you're putting it back into the original buttercream frosting, that's going to be a problem. It's going to be buttercream plus cake crumbs, which means it's going to last a shorter period, right? Because cake is very perishable. So one of the things we do, like we're in class and you're learning how to use, whether it's whipped cream or buttercream frosting, by the way, we'll have you have 2 bowls. One bowl has your original frosting. We have you scoop out the margarine, put it in another bowl. So that's where you're going to be scooping that and applying on the cake. If you have to scrape it, you're scraping onto the bowl with crumbs. We have you separate the two so you don't contaminate both bowls of buttercream frosting. So just a point to note. You can do the same. Now, in case you have buttercream that has crumbs that's still left over, please store it separately. And every time we store our buttercream, we write buttercream and we write the date it was made. If it has crumbs, we're going to write there with crumbs so that if I'm using it for something else, or I want to know which buttercream do I use first, I'm going to pick that one, right? And for example, if you're the kind of person who makes cake pops or cakesicles, you can use that buttercream that has the crumbs in it instead to just kind of help you out. When it comes to the actual storage, please make sure you have airtight containers. If you're a baker who's baking, start investing in airtight containers, right? They're perfect for putting whipped cream, putting buttercream that you haven't fully finished. Remember, label everything. We label everything in our bakery. Make sure you put the label. What is this? If it's whipped cream, we write there pristine, the date it was whipped, that kind of thing. So make sure you put in an airtight container. If you don't have that, or if you're not sure if your container is airtight, cling film it, right? And then put it in a cool, dry place. Best option is to put it in the fridge, right? If you know you're going to be using it soon. If you know it's going to be a while before you use it, put it in the freezer. However, realize that if you want to defrost it, you have to put it in the fridge first and then remove. If your buttercream is in the fridge, remove it like, 3 hours before, 4 hours before, so it can come to room temperature. Whip it with a mixer or a whisk, and then you can use it again. So that's how you store that. Remember, make sure to subscribe to the channel, right? So hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and make sure you like this video if you feel that this was very helpful for you. I want to share one more bonus tip for you guys that might help you, specifically for those people who are in the coast or they're in a very hot type of region and you're wondering, what do I do? So I have a combined tip for you. If you're using American buttercream, like, please note this is American buttercream frosting. If you're using American buttercream frosting in hot weather, two things consider. Now, the best option is for you to use butter always. It tastes better. It's the original way. However, if you're in a very hot area, I will tell you, you need a more heat stable fat. Now, personally, I am completely against using shortening because that's raw fat. But because margarine is a consumable fat, right? That's why we apply it on our bread. I would suggest using margarine instead of butter if you're looking for a more heat stable fat. Again, if you're looking at temperature, if you're in a coastal region, consider using margarine instead of butter. And secondary to that, adding some cornstarch to your icing sugar actually helps it gives it stability, right? Now, please know already, most companies already add cornstarch to the icing sugar, right, to prevent it from clumping. But adding a little bit more, right, when you're sifting, when you mix it, put like some 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, mix it up, sift it together because it's very fine. People can't tell. It'll add a little bit of stability when you make your buttercream and you use it. It's gonna set more. It won't start melting as fast as you would have it do when you're using butter, right? So if you do the margarine instead of the butter, add a little bit of cornstarch, it's going to give you a lot of stability. And you can use this for, especially if you know you're doing a wedding in a different county or in a different state or whatever, like province, whatever it is. If you're going somewhere else, use these two things. They're just really, really going to be helpful. This is a tip I used last year when I was doing a friend's. We collaborated bakers for a friend's wedding cake, and this is one of the things I did. I did both of this. I used margarine and I also used cornstarch. And by the time I got where we were going, and we're coming from Nairobi, and I drove all the way to Narok, and my cake was still set, the crumb coat was still set, right? So if you want your buttercream to be very stable, those are two things you can do to help you out. So I hope these tips have helped. If you have any questions, I'm going to wait a few minutes. If you're watching the replay of this again, you can just comment at the bottom. I am going to respond via text for your question. So again, a reminder, if you need help, I do have an online class coming up. I will be teaching it. Most of the videos will be live. Some will be pre-recorded. It's going to be from July 22nd to August, 4 weeks. You'll get the recipe and the videos will be available for the 4 weeks, right? If you're the kind of person who's in Nairobi and you're like, you know what, I prefer hands-on classes, those are the best for sure. We do have multiple classes you can take. We do have a 5-day buttercream frosting decoration class that's $22,000 that you can attend. And as you can see with all our students, you get to make your buttercream, you get to decorate it on a cake. We do hands-on training. It's completely hands-on. You do the training yourself. We're located in Nairobi, Gong Road at Arcades Mall shop number 52, ground floor, next to the greenhouse. You can just call ahead if you want to visit and see the place. And by the way, we have both beginner and advanced level classes. We do buttercream, we do whipped cream, we do fondant, we do ganache, whichever it is you want. As you can see, these are some of our students. We do any type. So remember, if you have any questions about American buttercream frosting, if you have a challenge, like you've used American buttercream frosting and you didn't like it or something went wrong, you can comment below, and even later I'll check and see if I can comment or answer. And sometimes I'll do like shorts in response to comments that I think need more elaboration. You guys have a lovely day. Consider enrolling in the class. We also have multiple other online classes. Check the link below. Make sure to like this video, leave a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.